Hidden in some of the most desolate and extreme environments on the planet, these remote military bases serve critical roles for their nations. From icy polar bases built for scientific research to military fortresses built deep underground. Join me, we're going to explore 15 of the most fascinating and remote military bases in the world. Number 15. Thule Air Base. Thule Air Base, located on Greenland's icy northwestern coast, is a strategic outpost that serves as a critical, albeit remote, node in the United States missile defense system. Originally constructed in 1951 during the height of the Cold War, Thule was created as a sentinel against the looming threat of intercontinental ballistic missiles, specifically those launched from the Soviet Union over the North Pole. Its location and environment are inseparable from its operational history and present-day mission, which has evolved in the post-war Cold Era but remains essential. Today, Thule's radar tracks satellites and scans for space debris, protecting assets in orbit from potential collisions. Yet the base remains as vital as ever to national security, especially as interest in Arctic military capability grows. The base's location in the far north of Greenland is its greatest advantage and its greatest hardship. Temperatures here can plummet to minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and for 4 months of the year they pass without sunlight. During winter storms, frostbite can set in within a matter of minutes on exposed skin. And access to Thule is limited to 9 months of the year by sea, when icebreakers can make a path for supply ships. The challenges of operating in this climate affect everything from day-to-day logistics to emergency responses, as seen during the cleanup following the infamous Broken Arrow incident in 1968, when a B-52 carrying nuclear bombs crashed near Thule. Its barren Arctic surroundings also conceal dangers left over from the Cold War, including unexploded ordnance from missile tests and hazardous wormholes in the permafrost. These are hidden pockets of frozen ice that can collapse underfoot. These remnants, along with the remnants of Cold War infrastructure, serve as a reminder of Thule's original purpose and the enduring presence of the U.S. in a remote corner of the Arctic. Number 14. The Dugway Proving Ground. The Dugway Proving Ground, located southwest of Salt Lake City in Utah, is one of the most unusual military installations in the U.S. Since its inception in World War II, Dugway has been the military's primary testing ground for chemical and biological warfare, designed to be safely distant from civilian populations while also providing vast open spaces. With over 800,000 acres of desolate terrain, Dugway's isolated location is integral to its existence. It enables experiments that would be inconceivable near populated areas, particularly when dealing with dangerous materials like VX, sarin, and mustard gas. For decades, it's been the site of countless tests aimed at understanding and improving defenses against chemical and biological threats. The U.S. military has used it to develop and refine protective gear, such as gas masks and chemical detection systems, making it a training ground for the Army's Chemical Corps, which prepares for potential chemical or biological attacks. All of Dugway's facilities include the $30 million test building, enough to fit small aircraft, where soldiers can practice decontaminating equipment and containing hazardous agents in a controlled environment. While Dugway's role has shifted somewhat with time, it remains a critical asset, as chemical and biological warfare remain a concern. For example, the base is used to evaluate chemical and biological detectors, test drone capabilities for monitoring dangerous sites, and simulate cleanup scenarios that mimic real-world conditions. The Proving Ground is also a place where necessity and caution intersect. It's a remote desert location, and extensive restricted area make it one of the few sites in the world where such a volatile test can happen. Its isolation allows it to continue a delicate mission, where advancing protective technology against some of the deadliest substances on Earth comes with inherent risks. As long as the threat of chemical and biological weapons remain, Dugway will continue to be a pivotal, if shadowed, cornerstone of national security tucked away in the desert landscape. Number 13. Kwajalein Atoll. Kwajalein Atoll, one of the most remote and unusual military installations in the world, is a unique staging ground for some of the U.S. military's most advanced missile defense testing. Located in the Pacific Ocean around 2,100 miles southwest of Hawaii, this atoll is part of the Marshall Islands. It consists of 97 small islands spread over an expansive 1,100 square miles, surrounding a central lagoon the size of a large city. The U.S. leases 11 of these islands, with Kwajalein Island serving as the hub of military activity and Mek Island operating as a launch facility. The distance from major population centers and minimal commercial shipping traffic across the surrounding waters mean that missile tests can proceed with minimal risk of public interference. Additionally, radio interference is low, ensuring a clear communication and control over sensitive tests. The atoll has been used to test ballistic missile interceptors like the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense that has even played a role in developing technologies that indirectly contributed to the advent of the Internet. More recently, it's become a testing ground for experimental hypersonic weapons, which require isolated spaces for their high-speed, long-range testing. This location makes it an ideal testing spot for hypersonic weapons using scramjet engines, allowing missiles to reach unprecedented speeds and enabling the Pentagon to gauge their capabilities in intercepting ballistic threats. Living on Kwajalein is as unusual as the testing that takes place there. Most military personnel and civilian contractors reside on the island, which serve as the main inhabited area of the atoll. To reach Mek Island, the site of the primary launch facilities, workers face a 25-mile commute across the water. And with a small, tight-knit community of U.S. residents, daily life here revolves around a unique mix of cutting-edge military operations and the isolated scenic environment of the Pacific. Number 12. Raven Rock. Raven Rock, officially known as Site R, or the Raven Rock Mountain Complex, is one of the most secretive U.S. military installations, designed to serve as the ultimate backup Pentagon. Dug deep into a mountain along the Pennsylvania-Maryland border, this massive underground facility was built during the Cold War. It's a place that's built to withstand the unthinkable: nuclear strikes, biological attacks, or other catastrophic scenarios. It was constructed in the 1950s. It was born from the Cold War era need for continuity of government. It's a hardened location where top U.S. leaders could survive and maintain command if Washington, D.C. were attacked. Designed to be virtually impenetrable, Site R was equipped to shelter key military and government officials in a fortress buried within Raven Rock's mountain granite. Its primary mission: ensure the survival and operational continuity of the Pentagon in a scenario where above-ground command structures were compromised. Today, much about Raven Rock remains highly classified and access is strictly limited. The site contains offices used by the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, which focuses on countering weapons of mass destruction, along with weather monitoring technology for Air Force One. Though specifics are elusive, the bunker also reportedly holds a suite of advanced technologies designed to support the continuity of government activities. Bunkers like this one are not only intended to protect their inhabitants, but also to isolate them. In the face of a national crisis, Site R becomes a paradox, both a place of refuge and a place that locks its inhabitants away from the outside world. If communications break down or external support systems fail, the isolation intended to protect leaders could also limit their ability to effectively coordinate a response. Number 11. Diego Garcia. Diego Garcia is more than an island. It's one of the most strategically vital and secretive military bases on Earth. It's located in the Indian Ocean, nearly 1,000 miles from the nearest landmass. It's the kind of place most people will never see. But for the US and UK, Diego Garcia is an irreplaceable foothold, a footprint of freedom, as the military calls it, serving as a launch point for operations and intelligence missions across the world. Diego Garcia could pass for paradise with lush vegetation, white sand beaches, and turquoise waters, but the island's beauty belies its purpose. Since the 1970s, this 44-square-kilometer island has been home to a high-security military base used by both the United States and the United Kingdom. It's positioned at the heart of the Indo-Pacific. Diego Garcia's location is critical. It's halfway between Africa and Southeast Asia, within reach of the Middle East and the southern coast of Asia. In a region where geopolitical tensions run high, Diego Garcia is the center of an invisible network of operations. The island's role, though, has evolved over the decades. Originally leased to the United States in the 1960s, it became essential during the Cold War, allowing for rapid U.S. military response to any Soviet activity in the Indian Ocean. But it became a central base for operations again after 2001. It is one of only 2 U.S. bomber bases in the Indo-Pacific, giving the U.S. the ability to deploy heavy bombers like the B-1s and B-52s. It is accessible only by military flights, and even the few civilians who work there have to undergo rigorous security screenings. The island functions as a sort of self-contained world with its own power plants, water supplies, and airstrips, all heavily fortified and protected. Access to and information about Diego Garcia is so limited that its activities remain largely speculative, fueling rumors of clandestine operations from counter-terrorism efforts to surveillance and intelligence missions. Number 10. Ericsson Air Station. Ericsson Air Station, located on Shemya Island in the Aleutians, is one of the world's most remote military bases. Located about 1,450 miles west of Anchorage, Alaska, and just 200 miles from Russian territory, this outpost is closer to the Russian mainland than it is to Alaska. Originally established during World War II as an airfield for U.S. bombers, Ericsson's role evolved throughout the Cold War and beyond, becoming a silent sentinel in the northern Pacific for monitoring threats and safeguarding American skies. The heart of Ericsson's operations is the Cobra Dane radar system. This is an immense 120-foot-tall structure that permanently faces westward. This radar, built in 1976 to support Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty, is one of the most powerful of its kind. It uses a phased array radar composed of over 34,000 elements to keep a constant watch over a 2,000-mile corridor into Russian airspace. This unique design allows the Cobra Dane to detect missile launches, track up to 120 targets, and maintain precise data on up to 20 of them. This Cobra Dane also plays a role in space surveillance, tracking space debris within a range of over 28,000 miles and storing data on over 12,000 objects to help mitigate any risks to satellites. Life on the island, though, reflects the isolated, challenging environment of the Aleutians. This is a small 6-square-mile island that endures brutal weather, with fog covering the 10,000-foot runway for half the year. There are no civilian settlements here and only essential personnel, military and technical contractors that are stationed here to keep operations running. Ericsson's remote location is both its strength and its weakness. The isolated position places Cobra Dane in an ideal location for monitoring potential Russian threats and tracking satellites, yet also makes it vulnerable to the elements and difficult to access. Fog often makes landings dangerous and limits Ericsson's use as a divert airfield for emergency landings. Nevertheless, though, the U.S. military values the station's strategic position for potential defense and needs in the region. Number 9. The Yulin Naval Base. The Yulin Naval Base, located on Hainan's island's southern coast near Sanya, is an exceptionally fortified and strategically valuable asset within China's maritime defense and power projection ambitions in the South China Sea. Built into rugged coastal mountains, the base houses facilities specifically designed for nuclear submarines, including a submarine tunnel system that allows subs to remain shielded from satellite observation. These subs, which can carry intercontinental ballistic missiles, are a critical component of China's nuclear triad, providing second strike capability that deter potential adversaries from initiating conflict. Over recent years, China has expanded the Yulin base significantly. Satellite images show ongoing construction of new piers and additional harbor infrastructure, likely to accommodate the growing fleet of submarines and surface ships. The 2 new piers, extending up to 780 feet each, are located on newly reclaimed land and are strategically positioned to support the South Sea's fleet nuclear-powered subs and surface vessels. But the base's location on Hainan Island is no coincidence. This position places Yulin within easy reach of key shipping lanes in the South China Sea and allows China to project power over regional neighbors and monitor foreign naval activities. The surrounding region is heavily fortified with electronic warfare systems and nearby air bases. This layered defense makes it challenging for any adversary to approach or threaten Yulin without substantial logistical resources. As a dual-purpose base, though, Yulin facilitates traditional military objectives, such as force projection and deterrence in the South China Sea, and it serves as a hub for advancing naval technology, potentially including autonomous platforms that could patrol contested areas or engage in reconnaissance missions. Number 8. Keflavik Air Base. Naval Air Station Keflavik, positioned on the southwestern peninsula of Iceland, has long been a key player in both U.S. and NATO defense operations, especially throughout the Cold War. Built initially during World War II, the airbase served a critical purpose, securing northern Atlantic air routes and defending Iceland against potential Axis incursions. This remote outpost's strategic significance grew as military tensions spiked during the Cold War, underscoring the base's potential to act as a guardian of the North Atlantic. Though established initially as a wartime necessity, the base's role in Iceland persisted well beyond World War II. After U.S. forces temporarily withdrew in 1947, the NATO defense mission returned in 1951 under the Iceland Defense Force Agreement, a NATO arrangement that reinforced the island nation's neutrality while safeguarding it from potential Soviet influence. Through the decades, the Naval Air Station Keflavik became central to American and NATO anti-submarine operations, with rotational deployments on aircraft like the P-3 Orion. Now, one of Keflavik's unique aspects was its integrated civilian and military functions. With Iceland's civilian international airport sharing its grounds, the base operated under atypical conditions for a military facility. This arrangement led to occasional security challenges as Soviet espionage activities were reportedly carried out under diplomatic cover through the Soviet embassy in Reykjavik during the Cold War. Over time, though, heightened security measures and the construction of a dedicated civilian terminal helped address those concerns. While the base closed in 2006, in 2016 U.S. forces returned, refurbishing NAS Keflavik to support advanced maritime patrol aircraft like the P-8 Poseidon, which resumed the mission of monitoring submarine activities in the surrounding waters. This reactivation signaled a renewed commitment to the base as a linchpin of NATO's North Atlantic defense strategy. These moves underscore how this base remains a vital asset even in the modern geopolitical landscape as a strategic outpost in the face of renewed Arctic and North Atlantic tensions. Moving on to number 7, Pituffik Space Base. Pituffik Space Base, located in the stark Arctic wilderness of northwest Greenland, is the northernmost military installation of the United States. Originally, it was known as Thule Air Base. The outpost is a mere 750 miles from the Arctic Circle, positioned with a rare advantage for tracking objects in polar orbits. This remote vantage point makes it a unique asset for space surveillance. From its origins during the Cold War to its modern role in space defense, Pituffik serves as a guardian of the high Arctic, where the extreme environment only intensifies its strategic significance. In this isolated region, the base hosts the 12th Space Warning Squadron, a unit responsible for missile detection through the Ballistic Missile Early Warning System, which tracks potential threats in collaboration with NORAD. Here, the 23rd Space Operations Squadron operates tracking stations that connect with polar orbiting satellites to maintain around-the-clock watch on space traffic. This base experiences long, severe winters and brief, cool summers, with temperatures that can plunge to minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. But despite the conditions, Pituffik's runway at 10,000 feet is one of the few Arctic airstrips capable of supporting heavy aircraft year-round. Each summer, a single heavy supply ship navigates the thinning ice to bring essential provisions as part of Operation Pacer Goose, a reminder of how dependent the base is on careful timing and logistics. The base's operations also play an important role beyond its own boundaries. Pituffik missile and satellite tracking data are routed to command centers like Peterson Space Force Base and forming a broader U.S. and allied defense system. Furthermore, its facilities support other high Arctic installations, including weather stations in the region. With a staff mix of U.S. and Danish personnel, Pituffik exemplifies international Arctic cooperation, maintaining a constant military presence where few can even survive. Number 6. Mount Yamantau. Mount Yamantau, a tall 5,300-foot peak in Russia's southern Ural Mountains, is not just another scenic location on the map. It's known to the locals as Yamantau, or Evil Mountain. The rugged terrain and wild nature in this region reflect the mountain's ominous reputation. Rising from the Beloretsky district of Bashkortostan, Yamantau is both geographically commanding and strategically concealed. The mountain has two main plateaus, Big Yamantau at 5,380 feet and Small Yamantau at 4,960 feet. This unique structure allows for easy camouflage with thick forest cloaking its lower slopes. The entire area surrounding Mount Yamantau is guarded by the closed city of Mezgorai. It's established in 1995. This restricted town shelters up to 30,000 residents, many of whom work at or are connected to the Yamantau site. Mezgorai is classified as a closed administrative territorial formation, meaning only authorized individuals are allowed access. For years, U.S. satellite imagery has captured vast excavation projects in and around Yamantau. Despite inquiries, though, Russia has offered only cryptic explanations. Some officials claim that the complex is a mining site, others say it's a storage facility for Russian treasures, and still others describe it as a vast bunker in preparation for nuclear war. Well, given the Cold War context in which the site was developed, those varying explanations have done little to dispel suspicions that Yamantau harbors a secret defense infrastructure, akin to the United States' Cheyenne Mountain Complex. By the late 1990s, a United States congressional report cited the deception and denial policy surrounding Yamantau as inconsistent with the era's international cooperation, fueling Western concerns about the site's true purpose. Mezgorai's residents are believed to maintain infrastructure that could serve both defensive and survival needs, pointing to the potential for an underground command center equipped for crisis scenarios. The harsh climate of the area, with brutal winters, freezing winds, and thick snowfall, further isolates the site. But with its layered history of local lore, strategic defenses, and geopolitical intrigue, it stands as an example of secrecy in one of the world's most remote regions. Although the Cold War has ended, this mystery still remains. Number 5. Fort Greely. Perched in the unforgiving terrain of Alaska, Fort Greely stands as one of the U.S.'s most secluded military installations. It's located about 100 miles southeast of Fairbanks. This remote base is a linchpin in America's missile defense strategy. Fort Greely was born in the midst of World War II, when the U.S. Army established the Big Delta Army Airfield to support the Lend-Lease Act. The base served as a critical transit point for supplying the Soviet Union against Germany and Japan, connecting with the Alaska Highway to streamline transport. Following the war, the U.S. recognized the need to equip soldiers for cold weather combat, leading to the creation of the Arctic Test Branch at Fort Greely in 1949. This branch became a center for testing equipment and training soldiers in Arctic conditions, eventually evolving into the Cold Regions Test Center. The severe environment around Fort Greely quickly made it a hub for cold weather testing. Through the post-war years and Cold War, the base hosted Task Force Frigid and Task Force Willowaw, which tested military capabilities against extreme cold. The Cold Regions Test Center was established to carry on the operations, and its location remains crucial to testing everything from vehicle engines to protective clothing designed for sub-zero temperatures. In the 1960s, Fort Greely added nuclear capability with the construction of a nuclear power plant, the SM-1A. This facility provided power to the base for a decade before being decommissioned, exemplifying the Army's innovative approach to managing energy needs in such a remote environment. In 2002, after the U.S. exited the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty, Fort Greely was selected as one of 2 locations to host interceptor missiles aimed at defending the country from long-range missile threats. Construction of this missile defense system marked a new era for Fort Greely, positioning it as a critical shield against potential attacks. Additionally, Fort Greely's isolation extends beyond geographic considerations. The freezing conditions and limited access roads creates a physical barrier that's difficult to breach. That's a strategic advantage in safeguarding the base's sensitive missile defense operations. In essence, the very landscape that makes life difficult at Fort Greely is also what makes it so secure. Number 4. Pine Gap. Hiding away in the heart of Australia's desert near Alice Springs, Pine Gap is one of the world's most secretive surveillance bases. Officially known as the Joint Defense Facility Pine Gap, this installation is an unparalleled collaboration between the United States and Australia, and its remote location is far more than a geographic convenience. It's a shield, a vantage point, and a silent sentinel for some of the most sensitive intelligence operations in the world. In the tense atmosphere of the Cold War, the U.S. needed a place where its satellite communication systems could monitor missile tests and detect nuclear threats. Central Australia, with its sparse population and distance from international waters, offered an ideal location. The base's initial cover story, space research, downplayed its true purpose, but the classified activities behind the walls here were of high-stakes military significance. When it opened in 1970, Pine Gap was focused on intercepting signals from Russian and Chinese missile tests. Since then, though, Pine Gap's role has evolved dramatically. Once primarily dedicated to monitoring missile launches, it's now a critical player in identifying and tracking electronic signals worldwide. The facility has grown from a few antennas to a network of nearly 40 radomes, or protective domes, housing satellite dishes that capture and relay information across the world. The partnership between Australia and the United States has made Pine Gap one of the Five Eyes' most valuable intelligence assets. This site's ability to geolocate electronic signals enables it to pinpoint the source of activities of interest, such as mobile phone signals, which could then guide operations targeting adversaries. The dual use of Pine Gap's intelligence capability has led to public protests and political debates within Australia, as the base's involvement in lethal operations contrasts sharply with Australia's traditionally less aggressive foreign policies. The intelligence-gathering power of Pine Gap is amplified by its location. The base controls a constellation of geostationary satellites orbiting above, which can survey nearly one-third of the Earth's surface. These satellites observe activities across Asia, including parts of China, North Korea, and Russia, as well as the Middle East. The surveillance is not limited to monitoring specific countries either. It extends to tracking any electronic communication that might be of interest to national security. Signals intercepted here feed into the broader intelligence network of the Five Eyes Alliance, which includes the United States, Australia, the United Kingdom, Canada, and New Zealand. Number 3. Camp Century. We're back to Greenland. In the vast frozen landscape lies one of the Cold War's most audacious military undertakings, Camp Century. Established in 1959, the camp was an example of American ingenuity and ambition, a city beneath the ice, powered by a nuclear reactor and intended to house some of the world's most powerful weaponry. Officially promoted as a research station, its true purpose, Project Iceworm, was concealed from the public and even from the Danish government that owned Greenland. More than half a century after its abandonment, Camp Century remains both a symbol of Cold War secrecy and a looming environmental concern. Located in Greenland's ice sheet, roughly 150 miles from Thule Air Force Base and about 800 miles from the North Pole, the camp was not only remote but practically invisible. If war broke out, the thinking went that this hidden base would provide a vital advantage, serving as a secondary strike capability against the Soviet forces. Under the cover of scientific exploration, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers went to work tunneling into Greenland's ice, creating a grid of corridors and chambers that would eventually make up Camp Century. Was brought into the tunnel at an astonishing rate of 1,200 cubic yards per hour. The longest tunnel, nicknamed Main Street, was an impressive 1,100 feet long, providing the main thoroughfare for movement between the different sections of the base. The base was also unique for its reliance on the PM-2A, a mobile nuclear reactor capable of providing consistent power regardless of the temperature. This small reactor was essential to Camp Century's operations, powering lights, heating systems, and scientific equipment. For a brief moment, the camp represented a self-contained city capable of housing 200 soldiers and scientists as they worked, ate, and even socialized within this frozen structure. The idea of Camp Century was audacious. The Arctic conditions proved insurmountable. As the ice moved unpredictably, the carefully constructed tunnels began to warp, threatening the stability of the base. The engineering challenges quickly became overwhelming, and the risks far outweighed the benefits. By 1966, it was clear that Project Iceworm was neither feasible nor cost-effective, and the U.S. military abandoned the project. Number 2. Bardufoss Air Station. Bardufoss Air Station, located among the stark wilderness of northern Norway, is essentially a military base steeped in strategic importance and historical weight. Established in 1938, this air station has carved out its place in history as the country's oldest operating military air station. Snow-covered terrain, sub-zero temperatures, and sweeping mountain ranges create a unique environment that tests the resilience of every soldier and pilot stationed here. The base serves multiple squadrons, notably the 337th Squadron operating Lynx Mk-86 helicopters, and the 339th Squadron flying Bell 412 SP helicopters, both of which are critical for Norway's defensive and support roles. Additionally, it's home to the Royal Norwegian Air Force Flight Training School, which has trained generations of Norwegian pilots, further embedding the station's role as a central part of their defense ecosystem. The base shares its runways with Bardufoss Airport, allowing Norwegian Air Shuttle to connect to the remote region with Oslo through regular flights. Civilian operations also include the Norwegian Aviation College and local flying and parachute clubs. During World War II, though, its location became significant. It was initially used by the British Royal Air Force in the Norwegian campaign, with the Gloucester Gladiators and Hawker Hurricanes launching from its runways to counter German forces. After the Allies withdrew from Norway, German forces took control, transforming it into a launch pad for attacks on the vital convoys that were supplying the Soviet Union. Post-war, though, it adapted to the shifting geopolitical landscape of the Cold War, drawing British and NATO forces for cold weather training exercises. The UK's Royal Naval Commando and Royal Marine units regularly train here, with NATO's Clockwork exercises sharpening skills in Arctic survival. In recent years, though, it has continued to adapt, with its underground hangar facilities used to house Norway's advanced F-35 fighter jets. Number 1. The Siachen Glacier. The Siachen Glacier is an expanse of ice and rock unlike any other on Earth. This 47-mile-long glacier, located in the Karakoram range of the Himalayas, is a formidable force of nature. It stretches over 18,000 feet above sea level near Indira Col on the India-China border down to 11,800 feet, cutting through some of the most rugged landscapes on the planet. Lying south of the Eurasian Plate Indian subcontinent divide, the glacier rests between the towering peaks of the Karakoram to the east and the Saltoro Ridge to the west, both marked by dizzying altitudes. The glacier's remote setting has led to the construction of a network of outposts, camps, and even pipelines. Since 1984, India has maintained a presence on Siachen, building over 100 outposts along the Saltoro Ridge and laying oil pipelines nearly 155 miles long. Each winter, heavy snow blocks access, and helicopters become the only viable means of transport here. Now, while the primary focus at Siachen has been military, the glacier has garnered attention as an ecological site. Despite being one of the planet's longest glaciers outside the polar regions, Siachen is receding rapidly. Satellite data reveals it has shrunk by about a third in recent decades. Siachen is also an ecological anomaly within the third pole of high-altitude glaciation, holding immense water reserves that feed into rivers supplying water to millions of people. The idea of transforming Siachen into a peace park has been suggested by environmentalists and peace advocates to protect its fragile ecosystem. Since Siachen lies close to the Karakoram Wildlife Sanctuary and Pakistan's Central Karakoram National Park, the establishment of a joint park could create a protected corridor. Species like snow leopards, ibex, and the Tibetan wolves inhabit the surrounding valleys and ridges. They face risks from climate change and the footprint of human activity. The Peace Park proposal envisions Siachen as a sanctuary where researchers from both India and Pakistan could work together. In recent years, the Indian government has opened limited access to trekking and mountaineering expeditions in the area, and this initiative has allowed those trekkers to experience the stark beauty of Siachen, while also showcasing India's operational capability along the Saltoro Ridge. As temperatures drop, though, these temporary visitors glimpse the harsh realities faced by those who have spent weeks, months, or even years in this frozen fortress. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time. Thank you to our channel members.